everybody, and welcome back to another brand new video this week, where today I'm going to be continuing my series of videos looking at the fan reaction to each episode of Series 12. We've had 3 episodes so far with 3 fairly varying opinions, I think it's fair to say, but overall the videos themselves have gone down really quite well, and I'm so pleased that you guys have been enjoying this style of video, and also that you've been commenting on all my videos about the episodes so that I can actually include them in this video. It's always just really good fun to be able to engage with the community a bit more, gauge what people are thinking about the show, what they're enjoying and not enjoying at the moment, and about each of these different episodes. So today, of course, we're going to be looking at episode 4, Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. Thank you for all the comments I got, not quite as many as the last couple of weeks, but that's mainly because I didn't get the videos up at the right time, unfortunately. But there's still lots to choose from there, and gives quite a broad range of opinions, I think, and helps us to gain a fairly good idea of what the overall fan opinion on the episode is. So yes, as always with this video, I essentially just work my way through all your comments and pick out some of the best ones and some of the ones that represent sort of lots of people's opinions. So when 10 people have said the same sort of comment, I'll pick out the one that's kind of the bestly worded version of that, basically, and then use that to kind of portray in this video. So hopefully that is then able to give you a good perspective on what the fans are thinking, and you never know, you might get a shout out as well. So we'll get stuck straight in with our first comment, which today comes from Alex Richardson. Thank you very much for your comment, who says, really good. Gron Vizhnich, however he pronounced his name, I don't even know, who says, did amazingly as Tesla. Edison was also great, the villain was good, and I like the one-line reference to the destruction of Gallifrey. Jodie was probably at her best this time round. The companions didn't have that much to do, but still more than in a Series 11 episode. Again, there was no cold opening, but I think they could have put one just after the Doctor first shows up. Some of Graham's jokes were a bit flat. I like the thing about no one knowing who Tesla was, but knew Edison. It was like a reverse of Vincent the Doctor. Overall, 8 out of 10, much better than last week. And yeah, I tend to pretty much agree with basically everything in that comment, to be honest. I do think that Jodie's getting better and better as the Doctor at the moment. I feel like this series has really been a step forward in her character and just moving it just slightly darker, more serious tone to her Doctor, not to an excessive degree, but just a little bit more of that's coming out, I think, in her character and just adding a few more layers to it. And I just kind of feel she's got maybe that little bit more of a screen presence and just holding the scenes a little bit better than she was in Series 11. Not that she was ever bad in Series 11, I just think it's taken another step forward in this series, which is really, really good. He also mentions about the cold openings, and yeah, I was a little bit disappointed that we still haven't had another cold opening since the first episode of the series, when Chris Chibnall said that we do it for some episodes and not for others. I thought it'd be a little bit more frequent than 1 out of 4 so far, because you can't really count Spyfall Part 2 with a cold open. It's just got a previously recap and then the titles. We'll have to see if they do that for the June episode, and I can kind of see how it worked in this story, in the Tesla story, but also I feel like the start of the episode did work quite effectively with us kind of following it from Tesla's point of view and then joining in with Jodie and the crew, or the Doctor and the crew, halfway through, sort of 5 minutes in the episode, and we're just joining their adventure. I thought that was a really good way to start the episode, so yeah, I thought that worked quite well, but thank you very much for your comment. Next comment here comes from Ben Hart, who says, not sure what I think about this one. Bit disappointed overall, to be honest. Historical setting looked nice, and Tesla was portrayed well by Vizhnich. Yaz got more to do, which was good to see, but I found the other companions were left on the side instead. The Skithra were decent monsters, but not developed all too well, though they improved with the climax of the story. Overall, a bit of an average story on first viewing, leaving me feeling a bit meh about it, also definitely needs a rewatch. P.S. Controversial opinion, I preferred last week's Orphan 55. I would say that's a pretty controversial opinion. I feel like the majority of the audience enjoyed this episode more than Orphan 55. But of course, as always, you're perfectly entitled to your opinions, and that's absolutely fair enough that you enjoyed that one more. I do kind of agree that Yaz got some stuff to do this week, which is good, but the other companions got nothing to do, which is bad. But then, as I talked about in my review video, that's kind of the problem of having 3 companions, is that you just naturally end up with 1 or 2 of them having hardly anything to do in an episode, which is rather a shame, but just again, an episode like this showed those flaws, I think. Next up is a comment from Joe Horrell, who says, a solid, enjoyable, here's a famous historical character and oh look, alien story. Only thing I didn't like was the Skithra Queen. The other Skithra were good. Found it a bit odd though that the companions didn't know who Nikola Tesla was. I thought he was reasonably well known. It's good that the Doctor didn't do a random 5-second lecture on AC, because the Transformers one, whilst they defeat the Dalek in resolution, felt really odd. Hopefully this time it might encourage some young viewers to learn about electricity and stuff. Also in Series 12 so far, Jodie is finally starting to feel like the Doctor, which never happened for me in Series 11. Maybe it's because she's been toned down a bit, I think, but I wouldn't want her to go dark or anything, because Doctors need to have distinctive qualities. Anyway, it was good. So that's great to hear from you, Joe. Thank you very much for your comment. I think that Nikola Tesla is a guy who is well known, but I think it depends what part of the world you're from and what was taught at school to you as to whether you've heard of him or not. I mean, I personally didn't really know much about him at all, and I have been through formal education in the UK all the way through, and did history and whatnot, and it just was never covered from what I remember. So I didn't think it was that much of a problem that the companions didn't automatically know who he was. I sort of felt it was just a good way to then introduce him to the audience for anybody who didn't know, and gives a bit more information about him as a person, which I think is really good. I also do agree about the not lecturing them about AC and DC and all that kind of thing. I think it was good to just leave that as his terms we're using. If you want to find out more, Google it yourself, because sometimes it works to explain something, sometimes it's just going too far into waffly dialogue that just doesn't even need to be there. And I kind of agree that in Resolution it was done a little bit badly about the whole Transformer thing that they were trying to explain in a critical moment of the episode. There, just Jodie waffles on about what Transformer is. It was, didn't quite work so well. And I tend to agree as well, as I said before, that Jodie's Doctor is definitely getting better. Our next comment comes from Bree in Maryland, I think that's how you pronounce it, who says, I'm not a fan of historicals because it's alien/monsters. This one was okay though. It was like a throwback to RTD. The supporting cast was definitely an improvement from last week's. Less is more. Goran's performance was the high point, likeable, sweet, low-key. The companions had some good dialogue. The villains reminded me way too much of the Ragnos, but I liked the concept of them being thieves with no originality. I wish Jodie would have been in period costume though. I didn't think the Doctor would destroy the Scorpions, but clearly she's been affected by what the Master did to Gallifrey, and you can tell she's starting to get tired of people and creatures trying to destroy planets, which seems to be a running theme. I'm liking the character development. However, I think people are rating this higher because last week's story got so much grief. I didn't think Orphan 55 was awful, it's just the supporting cast was too big and too unlikable. So yeah, there's a lot in there that I do agree with. I think it's worth mentioning that I'm pretty sure in this episode that the Doctor doesn't, or the lightning bolt thing that they send to the ship at the end doesn't actually kill it. I think it's meant to just be that it sort of, they seem to like fly away as the bolt was coming towards them, I think. So maybe I got it wrong and they did actually blow it up, but I don't think they did. I mean, it's a good point to mention that maybe we're seeing a darker side of the Doctor and things like that she's been affected by the whole Gallifrey thing, and that could be causing these kind of actions of literally giving them a chance and being like, nope, now I'm going to destroy you. I think that's quite interesting and could be developed quite well through the rest of the series, and it's a very, very good point. And as mentioned as well about Goran Viznich's performance, which is something that I think everybody's saying is very, very good. He just, as you described, he played such a low-key performance, but just picked up all the mannerisms so perfectly. I thought it wasn't too larger-than-life type character. He just really, I think, nailed it to a T, and it was really excellently portrayed. Now, coming in next, we've got a comment from TARDIS Travel 96. Thank you very much for your comment, who says, my favourite episode since Kablam. Whilst the plot and writing maybe weren't as good as in Spyfall Part 1, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. It was great fun, with superb performances from 13 and Tesla. Yeah, the Skithra were pretty one-dimensional, but the design was great. Angela Mahindri was clearly having a blast as the Queen, and the prosthetic job on her looked awesome. Still don't care for the fam all that much, but at least the script gave each of them things to do and decent moments. Overall, pretty damn solid, and one of the episodes of this era that has felt the most like Doctor Who. And I think that is worth mentioning, that it's very much a proper Doctor Who-y episode that actually pulled off quite well. I mean, maybe last week's was a Doctor Who-y episode, based Under Siege sort of episode, just it didn't really work very well. But this was a kind of classic historical Doctor Who story with an alien threat and a famous historical figure that actually was done really, really well and really effectively. And it sort of feels like, although it's nothing groundbreaking or like the most amazing thing ever and really different, I still think that it's okay for it to just be a really well done, well told, but simple story. I think that's perfectly fine. So yeah, thank you very much for comment, and overall, very good. Now we've got a comment from Dano HK, who's certainly very positive about it, who says, this episode actually brought my spark back for the show. A strong season started with Spyfall that took a massive step back with Orphan 55, but took 2 steps forward again this week. Genuinely felt like a kid again when watching this episode, and really hope this type of storytelling and strength from episodes 1, 2 and 4 continues on this series. And yeah, I agree that Orphan 55 looks like a blip compared to the other 3 episodes that were all very good across the board, I would say. That's the only one that's really been bad. The other 3 were really quite good, and it certainly presents a lot of optimism for going forward that generally a lot of the problems from Series 11 have been addressed, or at least improved upon for Series 12 in the most part, apart from the occasional thing that slips through like Orphan 55. And yeah, I also really, really enjoyed it, so I'm pleased to hear that other people did as well. Now, I've got a comment here from the Dinosaur Planet, who's a little bit questioning of Edison's portrayal in this episode, who says, for the most part I liked it. As an American, Edison and Tesla are revered as great scientists. I didn't like the vilification of Edison in the middle part of the story, making him out to be a terrible capitalist factory builder. If they'd just made them out to be rivals, that part would have been better. But in the end, they do become friends, still rivals, but friends. The actual villain of the story, the Queen Skithra, was good in my opinion. Finally, a story of an alien species trying to destroy the Earth. The end with Yaz and the Doctor should have been even walking and talking, not standing awkward. Thank you very much. Gave it an 8 out of 10. Very, very good. So yeah, I I don't know loads about Thomas Edison either. Like, I know a little bit more about him, but I'm still hardly an expert. And I'm sure, like in American schools, it's probably talked about a lot more, this sort of thing, because it's an American historical figure, obviously. So, like, I very much can understand that point of view, and so you might have more information about it to want to have it portrayed slightly differently. I think it was just naturally trying to create a bit of tension between those two characters. And as you say, by the end of the episode, they are reasonably getting on, shall we say. Now, our next comment comes from, I think, Mahoga maybe, I don't quite know, apologies if I pronounced that wrong. He says, I really like this episode a lot. The actor who played Tesla did amazing, not only in dialogue, but had a lot of body language that worked extremely well with each scene. Only issue I had was with the villains, already forgot the names, the Skithra, seemed a bit weak. Part of me was hoping they'd mention the Rachnos as a cousin race or something. One thing that I think might be hidden in the episode, however, is the Orb of Voss, referring to one of the ancient races. Somehow I think this will tie into the Timeless Child when we approach it. Part of me also wanted a Van Gogh moment showing Tesla the impact of his inventions in the future, but makes sense why he shouldn't see those things, because he'd probably create things earlier than intended. And so yes, there's a few good points in there. Glad that you enjoyed the episode. Yes, when I was watching it, I was thinking about when they mentioned about the ancient races and this orb from a very long time ago, so from these ancient races and things, I thought, that's quite interesting. When we're thinking about the origins of Gallifrey and Time Lords and this Timeless Child, could that have any connection in the future? It seems unlikely, but I thought that was quite interesting to sort of, it got a mention like that in this episode. And yeah, it's nice to compare it to the Vincent van Gogh episode. I think that, as you say, it wouldn't really have worked to be able to do that. You couldn't have shown him that, because it would have completely changed what he did, essentially. So that would have been stretching it too far. It was very much just about worked in Vincent and the Doctor. It was just about able to get away with it in the historical context, I think. It would have been nice to see something like that, but I still felt it ended on a very positive and hopeful note, where it felt like he was very much just excited to be a great creator and inventor and come up with new ideas, even though, as we know from history, ultimately he never really got the praise that he deserved. And our next comment comes from Sam Featherstone. Thanks very much for your comment, who says, really, really good. This is the Doctor Who I've been waiting for. Subtle societal commentary, a satisfying story and education on one of the greatest inventors in history. A believable antagonist and threat with enough character and tension for me to always be enjoying it. Some twists I actually didn't expect due to normal Who tropes, e.g. Queen comes down to the battle instead of staying in the ship, and period dress. Please give me more. So yes, somebody who's very much enjoyed this episode, as we can see, who's very pleased with the way the story was written. It's not too on the nose in terms of trying to bring out any sort of political messages. It's very much just being more of an educational story about Nikola Tesla, but also with an interesting sci-fi plot to create it into a proper Doctor Who story, which I think works really, really well. So I'm glad that you enjoyed it as well. As now, we've just got our last couple of comments here. One comes from Gethin Jones, who says, so far for me, this is the best episode of Series 12. It was a small, simple story told very well. It wasn't a mind-blowing episode, but didn't want nor needed to be one. The only thing that bugs me is the Doctor telling Yaz about Tesla's future. Having them sitting side by side instead of standing in the street with only one of them in shot, I would have them talking to each other and not half addressed at the camera as well. Other than that, it felt more like a Doctor Who episode than others in the Chibnall era. Let's hope this series kicks on from here and stays this good and gets some great episodes as well. So yes, certainly another person who really, really was enjoying this episode and felt like it was another step in the right direction for the show again after last week, and more in the vein of the first few episodes of the series, which is really good to see. And pleased to hear that sort of it was, as they say, it wasn't an episode that needed to be the most greatest episode ever, but what it was trying to be, it did a very, very good job of it. And our final comment this week comes from Ocean Smith, who says, Orphan 55 was a massively disappointing episode. I was slightly worried that Spyfall was a one-off in terms of its excellent storytelling, and that from that point we'd go back to the start of Series 11. This has proved me wrong. Oh boy, I love Tessa and 13 together. The Skithra was a strong villain. The companions all had a bit going on. Edison was great. A very subtle mention of Gallifrey, which was nice. If Series 12 keeps up the quality of Spyfall and this episode, it will go down as one of my favourites. So yes, quite a bold claim there that this Series 12 could become your favourite series. I think it's all going to depend for me on the second half of the series as to which one is how it's going to rank compared to other series for me. Series 9 is going to be a hard one to knock off the top. Series 9, 5 and 1 are probably my favourites, and to beat those will be a challenge, but if we continue in the vein that we've had so far, apart from Orphan 55, I can see it certainly getting pretty high up, and with the prospects of Jadoon, Sidemen, a Gallifrey story even maybe, and more Master, there's a lot of potential for it to be a really good series, I think. So yes, I hope you guys have enjoyed this little look back at the fan opinion on Nikola Tesla's Night of Terror. I think generally it's been very, very positive. Naturally, there's a few negative comments in there. There's a few of the standard, I didn't watch the episode, I'm never going to watch Doctor Who again, it's too PC and woke and dominated by SJWs, blah, 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 blah. But I've decided I don't care, I'm not including those comments in my video, because what's the point, really? If they haven't watched it, why would I even include it? So, yes, I'm glad for the people who did enjoy it. I certainly enjoyed it very much, and I think generally people enjoyed it. But I hope you have enjoyed this video. Do comment down below what you thought of it and your thoughts about about fans enjoying this episode, and whether you agree that it was a good episode as well. I'd love to hear if you disagreed or agreed, and just have good reasons why. I'd love to hear them down in the comments below. But apart from that, as always, hit the like button, the subscribe button if you're new here, and I'll see you very soon for another one. Goodbye.